Okie dokie, ladies and gentlemen, I tell you what, a real privilege and a real treat to hear from Professor David Pine there. Over 30 years of experience in sports science, and yeah, a privilege to listen to his regals and his learnings and his experiences. And we just keep going from strength to strength here because we're about to glide into a real punchy presentation to bring us home for the day during Strand 2 of the Singapore Sports Science Symposium. Now, I come from a small country as well. New Zealand's population is smaller than Singapore's actually. And, whilst we go well at sport, there's this constant tone and attitude, a pride really that we punch above our weight as a country. It's something that really resonates with me really strongly. And so, it was with great pleasure actually that I saw our next presenter, Dr. Marcus Lee, used that same language in the title of his presentation. Sports science catalyzing a little red dot's aspirations to punch above its weight in high performance sport, presented by our very own Dr. Marcus Lee. Marcus, good friend of mine and leads the Sport Biomech team at the Singapore Sport Institute, completed his PhD in Biomechanics and Motor Control, and a postdoc research fellowship in public health too, actually, at the University of Western Australia. Director on the board of the International Society of Biomechanics and Sports, manages a wonderfully talented biomech team that provides support to Team Singapore coaches and athletes across a range of sports. Interested himself in how vision and movement contribute to skilled action and injury prevention. Very passionate man about helping Singaporeans live better through sport. Passionate about everything actually, as our Marcus. And to be fair, and I don't say this lightly, one of the best speakers I've ever had the privilege of listening to. Really looking forward to this talk. Marcus, welcome in, man. The floor is all yours. Really looking forward to it. I'll catch you on the other side.
Thank you, Rico. Can you hear me okay, Rico?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Beautiful.
Yep, there is a bell.
All righty. Beautiful. First of all, thank you for the kind introduction, Rico. You've really set the stage for me. Really nice to connect with everyone amidst these very challenging times. Traditionally, we'd see you in our lecture theater at the Sports Hub. Nonetheless, with these times, it's still really good to connect with all of you via the virtual platform. Before I start today, I just really want to acknowledge that it's a real privilege to be presenting after Professor David Pine, who's a real giant in the space of sports science and high-performance sport. So today, I won't actually be going too deep into the sciences because the rest of my colleagues will do so across the next couple of days. What I do want to share with you, however, is our train of thinking as to why do we do what we do, and a little bit about how we go about our business. And hopefully by setting this context, you can resonate with some of these points that I'll be sharing, and you can take away some of these and apply it in your own context. And also, I hope that with this context being set, the presentations that follow, there'll be something for you to anchor upon. So I came across this quote yesterday, and it says, thinking drives behaviors, behaviors drives action, and action drives results. So as mentioned to you for today, what I really want to share with everybody is a little bit about SSI Sports Sciences journey, albeit quite a short journey, and the thinking behind why we do what we do and how we go about our business. So when we look at the Singapore Sport Institute, we really are the new kid on the block. Because when I look at the AIS, where Professor Pine has spent a lot of time in, the AIS was founded in 1981. If we look at the Japan Institute of Sports Science, it was founded in 2001. In the Singapore context, in the 80s, we actually had a small group of pioneers who formed the Sports Science and Medicine team. However, for SSI, we're only founded in June 2011. And that time, while we did some work, we were in a temporary facility and we didn't really have fixed labs where we could do our work. And we finally moved into the beautiful sports hub in 2014, where we're now well equipped. And that's only about a 6-year time frame now. So, when we talk about Singapore, there's a sort of like a running joke, right? Singapore likes to be the top in everything. And Singapore has been mentioned to be good in our education system. The airport is good. We've been voted the best airline before, although at the moment it's really challenging for the airlines industry. Got the best passport, safest country, very green. However, I'm sure my fellow Singaporeans would agree with me that sport rarely appears in the horizon of us having the aspirations of wanting to be the top in the world. And I'm sure that our international friends would also agree that, Singapore doesn't really come to the horizon in high-performance sport, in the space of high-performance sport. And recently, the Coach SG conference concluded. It was a great conference. I hope you guys had the chance to attend that conference. And I was very heartened to see this post by a participant at that conference. And I zoomed in on a few lines here, and it says, is it because we have already decided that we cannot produce elite athletes of being world champions? And as such, we've been emphasizing on sport being a primary source of education. And what this participant would love to see is a more balanced approach where sports excellence should not be relegated behind morals learning. And, it's just really heartening for a sports scientist that fellow Singaporeans have these aspirations similar to us, where we certainly hope that our athletes can punch above their weights in the international arena. So just taking a look at our high-performance sport journey, Singapore only won its first Olympic gold medal in 2016 via the amazing swim by Joseph Schooling. And we've continued the momentum into 2019. The SNOC slated the 2019 as a year of giant slayers. I've kind of point your attention, Constance, she became a world champion in Jiu-Jitsu. Amita here, the #1 fencer in her age group. Sherry here, World Bowler 2019. And if you look at our parasport, after an 11-year hiatus, the SDSC Sports Awards is back. And Iping Siu here in the photo is a multiple gold medalist in the backstroke in the Paralympics. And this year, we've got Eric and Shahida who won the Sportsman and Sportswoman Award. And Shahida herself is a world #1 para archer at the moment. So based on these data points, it certainly suggests to me that as an ecosystem, we definitely have not given up on our aspirations to want to do well in high performance sport. Of course, in the space of high performance sport, we are competing with other nations, not necessarily competing in a bad way, but I think every country is trying to maximize human potential, and in our space, it is through sport. So just at a glance here, I've just randomly picked various countries around us, and in one look, you can see Singapore has a really small population. It's got a really small land size. This is our context, and we can't change it. As such, really, statistically speaking, it's not possible for us to have more talented athletes than other countries, mathematically. As such, really playing the numbers game, it's really not going to work in favor for us. However, as a system, we really need to depend on the strength of our system, and that includes all of you here and all of us here as well, to work together to make it happen, not just in sport, but for every other sector that Singapore strives in. And so can sports science help our athletes achieve their aspirations? I came across this website as well by this gentleman called Wayne Goldsmith, and I believe he's a coach, and I found it really stimulating because he's basically listed down these 10 different points where sports science, you've still got it wrong. I'm not going to read through all the different lines. You can read it. It talks about, the sports sciences being primarily taught at the university in silos, and there are all these political barriers between disciplines where perhaps psychology might think they're better than biomechanics might think that they're better than physiology. And it brings up the themes of silos, right? And Professor Pine mentioned this word just now as well. And the next couple of lines relate to sports science being taught in academic institutions. And therefore, the theme emerges where a lot of the sports science is very academic, but may not necessarily be very applied in terms of helping coaches and athletes get better. So as I mentioned to you, our context, we are small, we've got a small number of people, and as such, really, silos, we can't afford to have that happen in our context. And as such, the only way for us to go forward and advance in the high-performance sports space is integration. Secondly, with the theme about sports science being very academic and not applied, again, we can't afford that. We need our sports sciences to be academic, scientifically rigorous, and applied. And so throughout the rest of the presentation, what I'd like for you to anchor your thoughts on are these two concepts: integration and scientifically rigorous and applied. On the theme of integration, when the Sports Hub was built, there were conversations to bring in our different national sporting associations to be housed in the Sports Hub together with Sports Singapore. And this is actually an advantage that Singapore has in terms of being small, because in other countries where they've got a huge geographical size, it's quite hard to connect easily, right? So at the moment, if I'm not wrong, we have about 18 NSAs housed within. And the whole intent of this is to promote more conversations between the different NSAs and Sport SG, to learn more from one another. And hopefully with this collective wisdom, we can advance together much quicker. So this is at the macro level, the integration of NSAs with Sport SG within the Sports Hub. We move things down to the next smaller level. And within sports science, we have been deliberate in integrating our sports science laboratories as well. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, I can't invite everyone to come and visit our beautiful facility. However, when you do come in future, what you notice is that the gym is in the middle and all the different sports science laboratories surrounds the gym, right? With physiology first, followed by nutrition, followed by sport psychology, followed by sport biomechanics. The intent of designing our labs like that is so that interdisciplinary work can be done, transdisciplinary work can take place, and we are able to move faster instead of having one lab on the first floor and the other lab on the second floor. It just makes integration a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to play this video and hopefully you enjoy this virtual tour of our laboratories. Rico, sorry, can I check with you? Can you hear the volume?
No, I can't hear anything, Marcus.
Okay, I'm gonna then share the volume. If you just excuse me for a bit.
No worries.
Let me share screen. Beautiful. Are we good now, Rico?
Oh yeah, I can hear that guitar. Yeah, good one.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed the virtual tour of our facility. And I'm not sure whether you noticed, even within disciplines, we've done our best to integrate even further. And what I mean by that is if you remember what you saw in the physiology lab, our physiology team has basically brought the mountains into the backyard. So in the past, when our athletes were planned to go for altitude training, as you know, Singapore, we don't have mountains, and they had to fly overseas to get into the environment. And there are actually only very few countries in the world that offer an ideal environment where there's the appropriate sports science support as well, and that's usually really really costly. So again, with our physiology team, the thinking was, well, how can we bring the mountains into the backyard? And so we currently have an altitude house that's 4 rooms with 4 beds in each room so that we can accommodate teams. And each room, we can manipulate the altitude from 0 to 5,000 meters. And of course, the model that my colleagues adopt in that space is to live high and train low. So while you're sleeping for 8 to 9 hours every day and you have your meals in there to clock about 10 hours a day, you get the benefits of operating in a hypoxia, and that forces the body to produce more red blood cells. And therefore, with that, the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood in your body is enhanced. And therefore, when you exercise, it should feel easier for you. But the train low concept is so that when you're training in low altitude, the quality of the movements are not compromised. So that's just an example of how we are bringing in facilities that we can leverage upon to help our athletes tap on these things as well. And just beside the altitude house is the environmental chamber, where again, my physiology colleagues can manipulate things like temperature, wind, humidity, and altitude. As you know, our athletes travel and compete in different places, and this just allows them to simulate the different conditions. So we bring things down a little bit further when we talk about the integration of personnel. And we do that via a platform called the Functional Sport Program. This is a meeting we had recently over Zoom, and the people who are here are the coach, the para-archery coach, a high performance manager from the Singapore Disability Sport Council. We've got our own SNC coach, our own sports performance manager, our physiologist, psychologist, physiotherapist, myself as a biomechanist, and the sport dietitian. And all these really forms the team around the team, and this forms a team that serves the athlete at the center, right? Right here. And so thereafter, this really forms the entire team. And we do this with all the athletes in the sports that we work with. And I want to talk about integration at an even smaller but deeper level as well. And that is the cross-discipline integration of skills via this cross-disciplinary training program that we've come up with this year, whereby we want to break down boundaries. It's no longer whether you're a sport physiology or a biomechanist, but regardless of your specialization, the team leads of the various disciplines have identified some core skill sets that every scientist needs to have. And this is extremely important during this period of COVID-19 because who knows when we can gather in large numbers again and travel. And I think the support model of sending one biomechanist and one physiologist and one dietitian with the entire team is a luxury and could be something of the past. And as such, every scientist must have these core skill sets. We must be able to look out for mental health issues, red flags, so that when we're on the ground, we can assist our athletes and coaches more readily. We must be able to administer recovery strategies through nutrition if we're at an overseas training camp or at a major games competition. In S&C, we must be able to help a team or an athlete perform some warm-up and spot them when they're doing their gym sessions. In biomechanics, we must be able to do some basic filming, some performance analysis, and we must also know how to monitor heart rate and blood lactate. So this will apply to every scientist as we go through this program. And of course, integration would be useless if eventually the training programs are not scientifically rigorous, or some people might say academically rigorous. And if coaches don't see applied value, right? And of course, the opposite will be true, where all these will be really useful only if our training programs are high quality, are scientifically rigorous, and there is a shared acceptance of the program with the coach and the athlete. And so what I'd like to share with everybody today is this equation that we often reflect upon, and that is quality times acceptance equals to effectiveness. And by way of example, over here, assuming that out of 10, I'm a really good scientist, let's say, or even if you're a coach, your technical ability is really high, it's 8 out of 10. But when we engage our stakeholders, as a scientist, when I speak with the coach, he falls asleep, and I can't speak his language, he doesn't see value in what I'm doing. Or if you're as a coach, whatever you're trying to do with your athlete, there's very low acceptance, then 8 times 2, as you can see here, we are only 16 out of 100 in terms of being effective. Of course, the opposite is also possible, where socially there could be really high acceptance because we can be really good coffee buddies with our stakeholders. However, if we don't have the skill sets that come with, that's necessary to develop high quality programs, then essentially the opposite can happen, where 2 times 8 equals 16, and we are only 16 out of 100 in terms of being effective. So in my team, really, we often reflect on this equation because if some of us has been spending too much time sitting behind a table and looking at numbers, and we haven't been going down to the training ground to observe and connect, then naturally the acceptance scores would be dropping. And that's a time where the higher leverage action really would be to go down to the training ground, connect with the coaches, connect with the athletes, so that we can increase our effectiveness scores. And of course, if the opposite is true, where we've been spending too much time connecting socially, but not enough time in the lab, coming up with innovative ideas to value add again to the coach's training program, then again, the thing to do is probably cut out some of these social engagements and let's go back into knuckling down in the lab and the sciences. Of course, this is just conceptual. And the question is then, how do we improve our Q and how do we improve our A? And it's actually really challenging in the sporting ecosystem, because if we think about the dynamics of the relationships in this ecosystem, the coach is like the lion, right? I mean, at the top of the food chain, really experienced, probably a really high level athlete previously. And the athletes are athletic like a cheetah. So where does the sports scientist sit in this ecosystem? And sometimes the sports scientist has been described of as a little bit of a monkey, we've done a lot of observation and studying, and some people might say, oh, the word scientist makes you sound kind of smart. But how does a monkey try and tell the coach and the athlete what to do in this environment? So again, this is a model that we consciously and subconsciously engage in to ensure that whatever we put forward has a certain level of quality. And what's important is when we work with coaches and athletes, what we found is important is we have to identify what is the question that the coaches and athletes are keen on answering that they believe will make a difference in their performance, right? We may not all be experts in all kinds of sports, but before we engage, therefore, it's important to engage in the research in that area, to prepare ourselves, to get some background information, engage with the coaches and athletes to refine what this question is, and observe at the training ground. And through that process, we can then start identifying the priorities of the coach and the athlete in terms of what should we be doing right now, which would yield the highest returns of investments. We go to stage 2 because in science, what we cannot measure, we cannot monitor, we cannot improve on, right? So once we've identified the priorities, we need to find the right tools to measure the performance variables related to these priorities. For example, if a gymnast or a synchronized swimmer needs to cut a bit of weight, then naturally we need a weighing scale to measure the weight before we do something. We need to measure the weight after. So the right tools, we need to measure these performance variables, and we need to compare them to either baselines or certain benchmarks that we can get either through the research or through the coach. We then move to stage 3 because we don't want to just measure and not do anything with the data. We then need to work with the coaches to adjust the training program, implement these changes, and monitor to see what's going on after the implementation. And when we move to stage 4 that's when we need to get feedback, either from the objective data or the subjective feedback from the coaches and the athletes. Have we created any impact? If yes, let's keep improving. If not, let's adjust, consolidate. And all this consolidation goes back into adjusting the program again in stage 3 of the intervention. Of course, stages 3 and 4 can only happen if there's acceptance from the coach and the athlete. So what can we do? I saw a question in the chat box just now for Professor Pine. What can we do to try and gain acceptance from the coach? I'm sure, different people have different ways to do it. These are some of my own reflections, as well as through conversations with my colleagues, our reflections. The first point is, I think we all need to care for our athletes and coaches as people first, because really people don't care about what you know until they know that you actually care for who they are and what they stand for. I saw the word empathy come up from Professor Pine's presentation as well, and I've got this here as well, because empathy is really important, right? When we engage our coaches and athletes, we need to listen to where they're at the moment, what challenges are they facing, adopt their language, in their sport, right? With Coach Balas, she talks about the catch distance, the exit. When we're able to listen to these languages and connect with them that way, then I think that's one way that we can increase our acceptance. Time, right? We've got to go to the training ground and get our hands dirty. So this video here is my pathetic attempt at sitting in a K1, and unfortunately till today, I still can't do it. But that experience certainly helped me to better understand the challenges of this sport, right? And the last two would be deliver. We should always under-promise and over-deliver. Once we've gained that acceptance, to continue gaining credibility, we need to deliver on time, right? And keep building on that. And I've also heard feedback from some coaches before that when they work with sports scientists, often we present a whole bunch of data, but we don't take the next step to work with them and recommend appropriate interventions. So when the space permits, I think that's one thing that we can value add as well, to extend the data that we've collected and make appropriate recommendations. So once we've done our best to make sure that what we want to present forward is of a certain level of quality, we've gained reasonable acceptance by the coach and the athlete, then let's not leave this to chance as well. Let's put this down on paper on a longer term periodized plan. So with some sport, we have a plan that goes for 4 years and that revolves around Olympic game, Paralympic game, or even Asian game cycles. With some of the sport, we strive to achieve 2-year plans, right? It goes on a Southeast Asian game cycle, or even 1-year plans that goes on a World Championship cycles. Why this is important is because when we capture this on paper, it allows for mutual accountability, whether it's between the coach and the scientists, or even between scientists. And also, as I mentioned to you, the only way we can go forward is integration. When we integrate all these on a plan, it's no longer about biomechanics wants to do this on Monday and physiology wants to do this on Monday as well. We're really asking ourselves the question, what is the right thing to do at the right time with the right amount of effort that will yield us the maximal returns of investments? And if you look at this plan here, it captures the coach's input here, and from all different disciplines, what we're committed to delivering and when. So I've shared with you some of our thinking and strategies. Of course, right, all these has to come together for the athlete because all these are meant to serve the athlete. At this juncture here, I'd like to play this video and introduce to you this amazing woman and athlete, Shahida, who's the current world #1 para archer.
Hi, my name is Shaida Alim and I am current world #1 para archer. I've beaten 71 archers in the world to get here. Very paiseh like saying currently #1. For me, my process is like a form of art. Before the start of every shoot, I will tell myself to breathe in confidence and breathe out anxiety from entering the shooting line, locking my arrow, drawing my bow, anchoring, aiming, rotating my back, all the way to my follow through. And imagine myself hitting the axe all the time. I do feel proud of my achievements, but I don't want to brag about it too much. I was born with cerebral palsy, and it is a condition that affects the lower half of my body, which is my legs. I have difficulty in walking and standing for long periods of time, and which is why that during competitions I will be shooting with a stool. At home, my family believes that I should be living independently, so they don't give me any preferential treatment. There's no such thing as saying, I can't do it, I can't do that, I can't do this. It's as if I was normal at home. But I think when I started school at the age of 6, 7, I can feel that people are not being very open to me. It was very hard to make friends when, kids are like playing ball or playing badminton, and I wanted to try out being in the team. They would say, oh, you're not fast enough, you're gonna make us lose. It was kind of sad to hear that. It can get quite lonely. I sometimes get jealous of other classmates who is able to do all that. I feel that I'm missing out quite a lot. But I learned how to swim from the age of 9 all the way until 11 because my mom was a real badass. She actually took me to the swimming pool and she managed to persuade a swimming instructor to take me on. She was saying that if you take on me, then you also take on my sister and her friend as well. So there was like 3 in 1 deal. He said, okay, he will give it a shot. That was my start of, experiencing trying out sports. I'm really appreciative for her for being there for me. Thanks to her, I become more confident to take the leap to pursue sports, and that's where I am now. Whatever I do is to touch the people through extraordinary feats. For others who doesn't know who I am and my condition, they will find that it is abnormal. And they will have the impression that as a person with disability, we can't do the things that normal people do. But that's where the trait that I get from my mom, to be strong and nothing is impossible, it gives me that sense of confidence that I can do as what an able person can do as well. Because the word normal is relative.
So in this video, we've introduced Shahida to everybody. So as you heard in the video, she's an archer. Shahida has CP. She can't stand and or walk for too long. And with CP, your feet are normally in a plantar flex position. And because of this, Shahida sits on a stool to shoot. So that's the background of the athlete. And in 2016 at the Rio Paralympics, unfortunately, Shahida's stool broke during the competition. And despite that, she came in, I believe, an amazing 7th position in the field. So once we've established the background of the athlete, the next is we go into the research and start looking out at what some research they have reported the performance requirements for success in that particular sport, and in this case, archery here. In this paper by Kim and Weong So, they reported on some of the important performance parameters in Korean archery, and Korea is really, really strong in archery. And you can see over here, they found that, or they reported that lower and upper body resistance training is deemed to be important. Balance comes out, upper body balance, maintenance of pace and direction and release, being able to shoot under pressure, having confidence is important as well. In another study here, it was reported that elite archers, of course, they're more accurate than their sub-elite counterparts, and normally before release, they exhibit a lower heart rate. than their sub-elite counterparts. And then there's this other concept as well, where archers have a longer quiet eye duration when they're elite. And the quiet eye is defined as the final fixation, or where you're gazing at, right, without shifting your gaze, prior to a critical movement. And so in archery, that critical movement will be the release of the arrow, and elite archers had a longer quiet eye duration. So once we've ascertained what are some performance parameters that contribute to success in the sport of archery, then we expand our search and say, okay, do we see the same information being reported in other related sport, right? In this case, archery being a target-based sport, we look at sport that are kind of similar. And we do see similar relationships. In this paper over here, we can see that there's a strong relationship between upper body strength as well as performance in pistol shooting. On the coaching website of the ISSF, balance is cited as critical for the shooting athlete. And that gives us some insight into the importance, again, of then lower limb strength and lower limb balance. Again, elite shooters, and this work was done by one of our ex-colleagues, Emily, that a lower heart rate is important and is associated with elite shooters. In our work here with our bowlers, we've also found that our elite bowlers are less susceptible to somatic anxiety under stressful situations, and they've also exhibited a longer quiet eye duration. Of which in darts, it also reports saying that, quiet eye is not just about the duration, but when does this onset is important as well. So we see synergies in what we found in other sport with the sport of archery. So when we start connecting the dots, right, the athlete's background that I've shared with you, coupled with the research that we found in archery, coupled with the synergies that we found in other target-based sport, drives the guiding questions of our interventions. In this case here, how do we improve the upper and lower body strength and lower the heart rate of Shahida when traditional aerobic exercises such as running are inappropriate? How do we improve upper and lower body balance, taking account that Shahida has plantar flex feet, right? And she sits on a tool while needing to maintain a certain height with the target board. How do we create a routine with Shahida that allows her to, in her own words, breathe in confidence and breathe out anxiety? And on the note of quiet eye, how do we improve her visual hardware so that she can see well, and software, right? Leveraging on our knowledge in quiet eye. So I'd like to introduce to you Kelvin. He's our strength conditioning coach. As you can see over here, he's putting Shahida through her paces, working on her upper body and lower body strength. And he works very closely with our sport physiologist, Dr. Rashid over here. And I mentioned to you about lowering heart rate, right? And currently, the team is working on some very innovative methods. One of them is this respiratory muscle training, or inspiratory muscle training. Over here, every breath that Shahida takes, right, there's resistance, and it's almost like a resistance training of your inspiratory muscles. And there's some, albeit limited research that suggests stronger inspiratory muscles have been linked to an improvement in performance in endurance sport, such as cycling. And over here, it's an innovative use of the environmental chamber. So as I mentioned to you, running and performing high-intensity exercises for Shahida is not the most appropriate way to go about things. But for our physiologists, what they've done is they've gotten Shahida into the environmental chamber, get her to walk in an oxygen-deprived environment of about 16%, right? And 16% corresponds to sort of 2,133 meters above sea level, similar to Flagstaff in the USA. And in this way, without the mechanical stress, Shahida is able to get the physiological stress, right? So that her exercise is more intense, and that would hopefully translate to higher aerobic fitness. So some data we've seen is after 6 weeks, Shahida's heart rate has decreased by about 6 beats per minute during submaximal exercise. And this suggests improved aerobic fitness. Also, from her own feedback, she feels less breathless when walking for long distances and better able to hold form when she's shooting. So we're encouraged with these results, very recent results. And then for my team over here, we've been working on a couple of things as well. As I mentioned to you, Shahida's stool broke, and as such, because she bought these stools off the shelf and she's only got one left, it would be quite disastrous if that breaks as well and we can't find a replacement. So I got on to design a customized stool for her that's sturdy. You can fully disassemble it. But importantly, the stool height can be adjusted so that whatever the training ground is like, whether it's long grass or muddy, when Shahida goes and competes, we can adjust the height so that her relationship to the target board is maintained as what we've identified in the lab. Also, as you can see, there's a spirit level there to ensure that all 4 legs are balanced. To deal with the feet plantar flexion, once when Shahida and the previous coach tried using some wedges, they mentioned that putting a wedge under the shoe was really useful. So we extended that by putting the wedge in the shoe by creating customized insoles with our partner, Tai, who's a podiatrist. This is some live feedback here. So I hope you're able to hear the auditory cue. And in line with this morning's presentations on guided discovery and manipulating constraints, as you can see here, there's very little instructions coming from the coach, but the coach has identified that she wants to promote better alignment of the shoulders and the elbow. And basically, when the alignment is out, what Shahida will hear is this sound, and then she'll have to adjust the technique accordingly to make sure that she doesn't hear that. But as we try and promote alignment and balance, often we also perturbate this balance, right? Again, from a skill acquisition angle, to provide opportunities for the athlete to find different ways of organizing her body to still achieve the performance outcome. As you can see over here, Shahida is seated on a Bosu ball and both her feet are planted on Bosu discs as well. And last but not least, this is very current. It was only last week that we, as part of the training program, are now looking at the quiet eye intervention. And this is how it looks like through Shahida's eyes. Excuse me. So what have we achieved in this short period of time? As you can see over here, I'd like to draw your attention to the 2 orange boxes. You'll see that the one on the left here is a bit steeper here, and this is a little bit more of a straight line. And basically through the 3D live feedback, excuse me, through the 3D live feedback, we have reduced the elbow flare from about 10 mils to about 2 millimeters. And this flare really is a migration of the elbow laterally when she's just about to release. And that's something the coach has been wanting to work on. And he's reported that in the training shoot, the scores seem to be improving. In terms of balance of the lower limbs, without the insoles, what we found was that there's a lot of weight on the left leg. So the ratio of the left to the right was 1.8. And with the insoles, we see a more balanced weight distribution. There's a bit of a standard deviation, of course, but what we're certainly seeing is that there's more balance with the insoles. I'd like to draw your attention here, if you can see this orange box as well. Might be quite hard for you to spot, but what we've noticed as well is after 100 odd shots, when fatigue is onsetting, we start seeing a little bit of a right heel movement when Shahida is firing, and that seems to affect accuracy. And what's interesting in our efforts of integration, right, as we work in an integrated team, when I checked in with Kelvin, our S&C coach, he reported too that when Shahida is working very hard in the gym, when she's tired, the right leg is the first one to go. So as such, this informs the subsequent training program, where as you can see over here, Kelvin is working hard to improve the strength of the right limb of Shahida. And then we've got our sports psychologist as well. He takes care of the mental health aspect of Shahida, works with her on this. And as you can imagine, during COVID-19, these are stressful times for many people, especially athletes who are training without a competition coming up in sight. And we are very well aware that the mental well-being and health of our athletes outside of sport affects their performance in sport as well. So Josh works with Shahida in this aspect. And when we talk about integration, it's not just about integration of hardware and people. It's also an integration of minds. So Josh works with the coach and Shahida to make sure that there's alignment in their vision as they work together. And last but not least, to breathe in confidence and breathe out anxiety, Josh works with Shahida to come up with a routine that she feels fits her to achieve that during training and competition. And last but not least, recovery is important. And one area that our sports psychology team has been working on is the use of flotation tanks that aid with recovery. And then we've got Miss Parim over here. She ensures that Shahida eats well, sleeps well, drinks well. And she's also done a bit of work in ensuring that with the right kind of nutrition administered at the right time, blood glucose levels are, we don't see spikes and fluctuations when she's shooting, because with spikes and fluctuations, they could really affect concentration and increase fatigue. And more recently, what's really exciting is Parim has been researching on the use of lutein and xanthine to improve the health of the eyes of Shahida, right? And in this paper over here by Hammond and Fletcher, I quote, supplementation with lutein and xanthine could potentially improve visual performance by increasing both the hardware, which means the health of the eyes, and the software, the visual processing abilities, right, of the system. And again, as we work together as an integrated team, this syncs up very nicely with the work that we're doing in the space of the quiet eye. So I've shared with you from a sports science and together with the coach how we've been approaching our work with Shahida. I guess it's important for you to hear from the coach and the athlete as well in terms of what they think about the sports science support.
Sports science really helped me in my training in terms of helping me to condition my body and also my mental so that I can perform better in training as well as in competitions. So from nutrition to sports psychology to even the biomechanics as well.
For me, it's more of a sports scientist actually helped me to quantify all the data. Like for example, like how well athlete is recovering, for example. So normally we will say that it's recovering very well, but by sports scientists around, they help us to quantify how well they are recovering into a number. That goes for performance rating. So for example, Shahida is shooting very well. How well she's shooting? Using a performance score in archery, there's a scores in terms of competition, but in terms of performing the technique and everything. So like for example, Sport Biomechanics actually assists us to see the parameters in terms of number better. So from there onwards, we get to see like what to improve on and where we can move on.
I think for me, whenever there's an opportunity for sports science to be involved in my training, it will be great because it helps me to identify old habits and also help me to better understand how much my skills, my body should be conditioned so that I can train more efficiently and effectively for the games.
For me, I think it's more of like taking the baseline parameter and to work on it and see what we can improve on and further improve the performance. For example, like if you are at the beginner stage of like a national athlete, for example, so we can actually start off with the hardest to get used to it. For example, dietitian. Food habit is always very hard to get used to it. So maybe sports scientists can help to introduce these new diets to the athlete, and slowly and you can move on to the more technical side like S&C, biomech, and everything else. So again I say all these sports scientists actually are there to help you quantify the performance rating and everything. So we, as a coach, we can see all these numbers better and can have a better training plan.
I hope that you guys stay strong and stay safe, especially during the COVID pandemic. I also hope that everyone will have a goal in mind, do something new, something different, or something better each day.
And hi guys, I think it's definitely a tough time during this period, but nevertheless we must stay strong and stay healthy, that's for sure. And of course, training don't stop. Yes, train hard. Thank you.
So what I've shared with you really is our approach with one of our athletes in the sport of para-archery. But really the same approach is applied to all of the other athletes we work with in our different sport. We might be answering different questions, but the approach is definitely the same. So as I start ending off my presentation, really to build our high performance sport ecosystem, we need to do it together because integration is the only way to go forward. So as you can see over here, SSI, Sports Science and Medicine, I've bolded partners over here because we don't have all the answers, we don't have all the capabilities, and we really appreciate our partners who have come on board with us, whether it's from the universities or polytechnics or industry, to serve our national coaches and athletes to help them to be the best that they can be. And we truly believe also that when we're in this space, the learnings that we get from the coaches and the athletes informs us, that then allows us to think about different things such as new areas of R&D, right? That again, once we've done the R&D, it often feeds back to helping our coaches and athletes improve. The learnings that we get from our work for coaches and athletes as well, we are always thinking of how can we share this with the ecosystem quickly. And there are various examples of this, but just one example would be through the sports science curriculum for the community coaches via Coach SG, whether it's your basic sports science course or the intermediate sports science course that we're developing at the moment. And of course, we take in interns from the universities as well and give sessional sessions in the universities. And we certainly believe that through your touch points, for example, when you develop other coaches with new knowledge, right? And then they coach their athletes, that feeds back into our national system as well, right? When our interns go out into the ecosystem and are able to do a good job, that feeds back to helping our coaches and athletes improve as well. Engagements like this, where we can share information with everybody and learn from you as well. This is another example of how we can grow together. And we certainly believe that after this engagement, through your touch points, it contributes back to the national ecosystem as well. In the community front, we work quite closely with our colleagues in Active Health and Active SG because we're well aware that, with a healthier nation, with the community being better at exercise and sport, then that inadvertently through their touch points would contribute back to a stronger national system as well. So really, for us to grow together and for integration to take place, first of all, for myself and my colleagues, we need to know who we are. And as such, really, to be in this space, we certainly believe that you need to have a passion for sport. To integrate, we need to believe in teamwork and we need to care for one another. And these are actually the core values of Sports Singapore. And why do we do what we do is because we believe that Teams Singapore's sporting successes on the international stage has the power to inspire the nation. And where we play a role in sports science is we hope to be a catalyst to optimize our athletes' daily training and competition. What do we really hope to achieve, right? As SSI, Sports Science and Medicine. What we hope to achieve is that every Team Singapore athlete's daily training environment is optimized using science. And also, to further integrate, we want to hopefully blur the lines between coach and scientist in time to come, where every coach is actually a scientist, where they know how to leverage on the science to optimize their training programs. And every scientist is also a coach, where we're not just a leader in our respective disciplines, but we understand team, skill-based and racing sports, and are coaching ourselves. I've shared with you some of our strategies in red over here. Q times A equals to E, that we need to develop our ecosystems together, and partnerships are really important to us. And of course, once we have a strategy, there are different tactics that we can work on. The ones in red are the ones that I've mentioned to you, such as mentoring interns, developing curriculum, but I've got a whole bunch of other stuff that we're working on as well. And why I'm showing you this is really when you look at this and you resonate with any of these at any of the levels, then we want to work with you. So it really is an open invitation to say, hey, please come on board and let's work together to grow the high-performance sport ecosystem. And before I end off, just to highlight how sport has the ability to inspire the nation, I'd like to bring you back to Joseph Schooling's win of the Olympics in 2016.
Right now I'm trying to focus on what happened in Parliament. First sportsman to be honored in Parliament, getting a standing ovation. I think that was pretty cool for me and my family, to have that honor and that chance.
So with that, thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with all of you to create magical moments like this again. Thank you very much.
Marcus, what an awesome presentation, mate. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. It's so informative. Plenty of gold nuggets, and they're really enjoyable too. I got to see you fall out of a boat. Q times A equals E, I really relate to that. Really nice message for people to take away. And the infusion of technology into para-archery, really quite impressive. I don't work with Shahida myself and wasn't aware that she was plugged into all of those different sports science capacities and innovations. Really cool. Rafiki is also my favorite character in Lion King, so I'm glad that, I'm a bullet of a monkey as well.
Yeah.
We've got time for a question or two, Marcus, if that's okay.
Sure.
Get some good ones rolling here. First one off the top. Dr. Marcus, why academic and applied? Can our sports scientists focus on applied only as the time and resources are limited? This may directly benefit the athletes more. What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again, Rico?
Yeah, so why academic and applied? I think perhaps referring to where our sports scientists place their time and energy in terms of applied work versus research.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why academic and applied? Because really, we want to be able to connect with our partners in the academic institutes as well as on the ground, right? And I always say this, right? I mean, we can work with the coaches and deliver what they want, but on the other hand, who is in a position to judge whether the science that we're doing is at an adequate level or not? And that is through research, that's through the academic institutes, right? We don't want to be putting up our hands and saying, hey, the science I'm doing is good, right? We want to put it out there, international peer review, and let the experts tell us, are we doing good science or not, right? And through the comments that they provide as we try and publish a paper or something, we learn a lot in terms of refining our methodologies and all that. But of course, if we just remain in the academic space, naturally, the acceptance by coaches will not be that high. And so it's really a skill, it's a science and an art when we're in sports science. How do we translate academic scientific rigor, work with the coach, refine this whole process such that it is deemed useful by the coach and we can really use it to help improve the performance of the athletes.
Nice, thanks for that answer, Marcus. Julian thanks you for an insightful presentation. Has a two-part question. From your perspective as a biomechanist for elite athletes, where do you see sports science and its, in brackets, potential role at the collegiate level in Singapore? Do you see a role for sports science at the collegiate level? And if so, where?
Well, I certainly think sports science is relevant to every level of participation, right? Sports science could be useful for you in your day-to-day as well, right? Rico, just as we were navigating the complexities of COVID-19, of which you'll be sharing tomorrow, as much as we look at, for example, vitamin D deficiency in our athletes in indoor sport, actually vitamin D is really important in boosting up your immune system during these times of COVID-19 as well, right? So, with this knowledge, regardless of whether you're a collegiate athlete or whether you're somebody not involved in sport, all this knowledge would certainly help us to all live better through sport and sport science. Perhaps to extend the question a little bit more, right? Often the question is, we've got all these facilities here, but how do we then extend this knowledge, right? So that, or accessibility to these facilities so that we can help more people. It's challenging, but we're doing a couple of things now. So for example, through our research, we're ascertaining correlations between data that we get from these sophisticated equipment that have to be in the lab with simple to administer tests, right? So recently we published a paper where a simple Y balance test has a good correlation in terms of how far you can reach with your lower limbs to actual forces going through your knee joints that has an impact on ACL injury risk. Why we do that is so that we want to share this information and implement them so that more people can access this knowledge. We're looking at developing simple sensors, right? That perhaps through your mobile phone, you can start performing assessments that we also perform in the lab. But research first needs to be done to validate that the measurements that we get with these simple to purchase or access sensors correlates with the data that we get in the lab so that there's validity.
Very good. Thanks, man. Just an extension of Julian's question with respect to perhaps applying sports science at a collegiate level. I mean, is there a key success factor involved there? I mean, like a big boulder, a big rock, to get that across the line? I mean, I don't know, what's the key to?
It takes me back to when I was in Victoria Junior College and I played basketball and football, and my studies, I did take a backseat at that time, but I'll never regret it because sport, was a big part of my life, and it was almost a time where I felt like I was a professional athlete, just training every day and competing. And just looking back, I think at a collegiate level, what's really important is to enjoy your sport, make the best of that time. But of course, then with sports science knowledge, whether it's through sharings like that, through reading, if you are able to better take care of yourself, then naturally you would see better performances, right? And again, with more knowledge about taking care of yourself as well, that also means that you're less likely to get injuries. And potentially, if you wanted to continue in your sporting pursuits, that could give you a longer runway as well. So I'm not sure whether I've answered the question, but these are just some reflections from that question.
Fantastic. Thank you. One last question. Actually, the question's posited as, can we afford to have more sports scientists? But rather than getting wrapped up around the intricacies of finance and dollars and cents, I think a lot of people probably are not aware of a couple of the amazing programs that we're plugged into at a government level as well to create more sports scientists, because as you said, Singapore is just a tiny place, and it's not just the solution is not just a money solution, is it? In terms of our SG United program running and our sports science training. Did you want to just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. When we talk about a fort, right? I mean, what are we talking about? Are we talking about financial resources? Are we talking about if more people go into sports science, then there's less people in finance? I think it's a tricky one. What I do know, however, is we actually have quite a lot of sports science graduates coming out from, say, NTU and even Republic Polytechnic. When I wanted to do sports science back in the day, I had to go to Australia because in Singapore, we just didn't have the course. And so the question is, how can we really partner better together with the universities such that the sports science graduates um, have the opportunities, have the exposure, and also have the aspirations to want to operate in our field, right? And work with our elite athletes and want to work for community level athletes. Because as we partner up better, then that also means that there will be more spaces for sports scientists to play in, right? And essentially, whether you're operating in the high performance space or in the community space, we're all in the business of using science to help people to be the best that they can be and live better. So I think instead of answering the question of whether we can afford it or not, if we partner up better, um, we can definitely leverage on one another to create those opportunities. And just to end off, data has already shown that there's a lot of gravitation towards Asia in terms of sport as a business. So when we look at that data point, then the only natural evolution is that we would see a greater demand for people involved in sport, including sports science.
Well, that's great. Marcus, a wonderful narrative today. Thank you, and really intelligent replies as well to the questions. I really appreciate your time. Good to see you on the screen, on the airwaves. And, actually that brings us to the end of our Q&A. It brings us to the end of our session. It brings us to the end of our day. So, folks, please do tune in again tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. We will be kicking off with Dr. Tim Sushamel, who will be talking about the importance of muscular strength for performance, and leading off our day where we find ourselves deep diving on strength and conditioning. It's going to be a really exciting one. Very soon we're going to show you our QR code. Please do give us feedback on both Dr. Marcus's and Professor David's presentations today. We really welcome your comments. We haven't had a whole bunch through and we want a whole bunch more, so please do get tapping away. We really appreciate it. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed your day. I've enjoyed being here and taking it all in. I look forward to opening the day tomorrow and welcoming you in with a nice cup of tea, and we'll do it all over again. Have a lovely evening ahead. Eat well, sleep well, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much.